Hello, I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory in for #TheYouWhat. It's Friday, May 27th. This is Africa 54.
Senegalese President Macky Sall fires his health minister amid mounting criticism following a fire in the neo-natal department of a hospital that killed 11 babies. In the U.S. state of Texas, a close-knit community grieves the senseless killing of 19 students and 2 teachers in a school shooting. And in our entertainment report, Heather Maxwell talks with the Ghanaian Afro-trap musician Kirani Ayat about his latest music video and his work with underprivileged youth.
We begin in West Africa, where Senegalese President Macky Sall has fired his health minister amid mounting criticism following a hospital fire in the neo-natal department that killed 11 infants. Ida Mullen has more.
Antaba brought 2 of her newborn triplets home on Wednesday from a hospital in Senegal's Tivoine. Hours later, a fire ripped through the neonatal department. When Ba returned to the hospital on Thursday morning to breastfeed, she learned that her baby had died.
One of them was too small and stayed in the incubator. God saved those 2. We had no problems at the hospital. They cared for them very well. It is God's will. It hurts, but we have to accept God's will.
A short circuit at the Mam Abu Aziz Si Dabakh Hospital had been blamed for the blaze, which Tivoine's mayor said on Senegalese radio had spread in less than 5 minutes. Job Si added that 2 nurses who escaped had not been able to save the babies in their incubators, all of whom died. Risk and security expert Amadou Kanar Diop, who inspected the unit, said staff appeared to have been overwhelmed.
Seeing the charred walls, we can say that people used up the extinguishers without touching the starting point of the fire. If they had seen the origin of the fire, 2 extinguishers would have sufficed. We would not be in this situation.
The tragedy is the latest in a series of hospital disasters in the West African country. Facing mounting criticism, President Macky Sall sacked his health minister Abdoulaye Diouf Sarr on Thursday and declared 3 days of national mourning. His office said Sall, who is the acting president of the African Union, would cut short his trip to the AU summit in Equatorial Guinea and return to Senegal on Friday. Ida Mullen, VOA News.
Now, fires, building collapses and corruption are among sources of pain and frustration for some African citizens. Many are expressing outrage over the lack of accountability for public officials. For more insight, Irongo Houghton, the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, joins me live via Skype from Nairobi. Good evening, Irongo.
Good evening, Vincent, and great to be on the show again.
Thank you. Now, it's not the first time we hear, people dying, things happening where you can blame negligence. We have had even schools burn in Kenya and children die. How can governments take responsibility and hold people accountable for this? In Senegal, we've seen a minister has been fired, but how much should it be done to satisfy citizens?
Unfortunately, as Amnesty International, we see too many cases of negligence or deliberate human rights violations. And I guess for us, what's really important is to recognize that, impunity and the lack of accountability is probably the deepest threat to statecraft. It's the deepest threat to an effective state or a responsive state. And for leadership, really the concern is that, they often say that, good leaders either have a conscience or they are fearful of consequences, and bad leaders have neither. And I think this is what we see in a situation like this.
Now, do you think the leadership may take advantage sometimes of the ignorance of the masses? I mean, apart from people like you, a majority of the people never know who is supposed to be held accountable for a particular issue.
Well, here's the thing. I think in the case of Senegal, what we were seeing there was that there was public outcry, and that forced the hand of the president to take action on his minister. And I think this is what we do need to see in all of the African countries, where there is a woke citizenry who are able to, first of all, know what crime has been committed, and secondly, what needs to be done. And it's not always the case that a administrative action, like, for example, the dismissal of a minister, needs to happen. In some cases, we do need to see criminal prosecution. But, you know, if Julius Nyerere was still alive, he would probably argue that servant leadership would require people to step aside and take responsibility. And this is what we see in many developed countries, that people actually, voluntarily step aside. They don't have to be pushed from office. And
we know that in many countries we've seen, people have committed even financial crimes, and people have been involved in embezzlement of billions of dollars just walking around and holding public office.
I mean, I think, there are a number of, there are a number of really infractions of leadership, and it ranges from, a moment of arrogance. I do remember the Deputy Chief Justice, for example, pinching the nose of a security guard as she walked through a mall and said, "Do you know who I am?" And in that case, the Chief Justice, Willy Mutunga, actually instituted proceedings for the Deputy Chief Justice to step down. Or cases of impunctuality. The stories of President Kagame holding his cabinet ministers and roasting them when they come into meetings late is another good example. But I think where there are issues of gross negligence, we do need to see very clear actions, and corruption is just one of those. In Kenya today, we are bracing for the Electoral Commission's list of applicants or aspirants that will be cleared for the 2022 elections. And sadly, it is probably the case that several of those cases, I think we are hearing figures like 40% of the people who came through the primaries will be tainted characters.
Wow,
and
so
you cannot imagine what a kind of a state that would look like, to have 40% of its oversight, parliamentary bodies, and the executive people of questionable character.
Really sad, and thank you very much, Irongo Houghton is the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. We really appreciate your insights there. Now, fearing for their lives, thousands of people flee their homes as the Democratic Republic of Congo's military clashes with rebels from the M23 insurgency. David Doyle has more.
Heavy fighting raged on Thursday in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as the army tries to fend off a resurgent rebel group. Thousands have fled their homes amid the M23 insurgency's most sustained offensive since an insurrection in 2012 and 2013. On Tuesday, the exodus was from clashes in Kibumba near Goma, the provincial capital of North Kivu province. Among those on the road was Zabanita Murarinze.
I was asleep when we started hearing gunshots, so we decided to take cover. The gunshots continued to increase this morning. That is why we have decided to flee with our belongings. People are saying that they saw unfamiliar soldiers. They are still there.
An imam from Kibumba said the strategic town fell to M23 on Wednesday. Spokesman for Congo's army could not be reached for comment. M23 spokesman Willy Goma said rebels had routed the army and allied militias, which he blamed for initiating hostilities. The M23 insurgency has its roots in the long fallout from the 1994 genocide in neighbouring Rwanda. M23's leadership is from the Tutsi ethnic group. It has justified attacks by saying it's battling the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, a militia founded by ethnic Hutus who fled Rwanda after participating in the genocide. M23 was chased out of Congo by the military and UN forces in 2013. Since then, its fighters have been frustrated by the slow pace of a demobilization process, aimed at reintegrating them into civilian life if they lay down their weapons. They have periodically returned from camps in Rwanda and Uganda. to stage attacks inside Congo.
What David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. Here's VOA's correspondent Anastasia Tudish with more on the security situation in Congo.
Hi, Vincent. I am in Kinshasa, almost 1,000 miles away from where the situation is currently happening. I will add to that as I am speaking, there is a Council of Ministers happening, meaning things could take a turn in one direction or another, unknown. But what we do know so far is that the Congo's army defended a major military camp in the country's eastern part last Thursday, May 19th, after days of fighting with M23 rebels making advances in the region. Fights continued at the Rumangabo base in the Ruchuru area of North Kivu province, about 25 miles north from the provincial capital, Goma. The fights have led to over 72,000 people displaced, according to the UNHCR agency in DRC. The Congolese government is openly suspecting the Rwandan authorities to be backing the rebels only 2 months after DRC became the 7th member of the Eastern African Community, which Rwanda is also a part of. I quote, "Suspicions are crystallizing on support that would have been received by M23 from Rwanda," end of quote, said Congolese government spokesman Patrick Muyaya. The military arsenal left by the M23 rebels on the battleground is not the type a rebel militia could afford, according to the Congolese military. Patrick Muyaya stressed it in his last press conference a few days ago. The DRC is seeking a peaceful resolution of the conflict. He also announced that the mechanism for monitoring the agreements between the DRC and Rwanda has been activated. A delegation, he said, is currently in Kigali to attest to the Congolese allegations. Accusations of the Rwanda backing the M23 are not new, and so far have been denied by the Rwandan government, considering them baseless. DRC is also looking for a regional resolution of the conflict. Mr. Muyaya said the rebels threatening peace in DRC are actually also threatening peace in the 6 other Eastern African countries, DRC's new allies. The M23 accuses DRC government of not respecting the commitments it made to integrate rebel fighters into the national army. After insisting on the government seeking a peaceful outcome, the Congolese government spokesman ended his statement a few days ago by saying that force is the other option on the table and DRC is ready to resort to it. For, I quote, "Those who are resistant to peace will be forced to endure force because there is a threshold of tolerance." Anastasia Tudish for VOA News, Kinshasa.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. Now, residents in the U.S. state of Texas and across America are coming to terms with a shooting Tuesday that claimed the lives of at least 19 students and 2 adults at an elementary school. The 18-year-old gunman died at the scene in a confrontation with law enforcement officers. VOA's Michael Sullivan reports.
In this town of barely 16,000 residents, nearly everyone has a connection to Robb Elementary School or one of the victims. This woman knows the families of some of the slain and injured children. Another woman's son, Fernando Rodriguez, is a student in 4th grade at Robb Elementary School. He was in the school when the shooter arrived, but escaped with teachers and other students through a window. Friends in another classroom were among those who died. This woman's great-granddaughter, Monique Alvarez, was among the children who escaped from the school and survived. The woman's brother, Manny Alvarez, asks why the teenage gunman could buy weapons so easily.
When they get 18, they can go and buy rifles and all kinds of ammunition and everything. I mean, I don't think that's right.
And what do you think can be done to stop these shootings?
The guns. That's what I think, the guns.
There are too many high-powered guns, Maria Alvarez says. This Nigerian immigrant drove here from his home in Austin, Texas, to pay his respects. He survived a mass spree shooting by a gunman in Midland and Odessa, Texas in 2019. Shot 3 times, he was lucky to survive. 7 others did not.
So it was sad news when I heard this. The past 2 days, 3 days, I couldn't sleep. Decided to come over and pay my last, show some love.
He blames politicians for not protecting the children.
So it's so sad. Their blood is in the leader's hand.
A grieving community asking why these young lives were cut short. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News, Uvalde, Texas.
An African Union summit on terrorism and constitutional changes of government is underway in Equatorial Guinea. About 20 heads of state and government and donors as well are expected to attend the gathering in Malabo that will discuss efforts by Africa's leaders to address current humanitarian challenges, terrorism and military coups. The leaders are also expected to talk about insurgencies in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, Libya, Mozambique, and terrorism in Somalia, the Sahel region, and West Africa's Lake Chad basin. AU Chairperson Musa Faki Hamati says 113 million Africans need urgent humanitarian assistance, including 48 million refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced people. To the north, Sudanese women's activist Amira Osma Hamid has won a Frontline Defenders Award for Human Rights Defenders at Risk, according to the organization. Now, the activist and engineer, now in her 40s, has been advocating for Sudanese women for 2 decades. She was detained this year in a crackdown following the country's latest coup. She was among defenders from Afghanistan, Belarus, Zimbabwe, and Mexico, who also received the 2022 Award for Human Rights Defenders at Risk. Well, here's a roundup of African stories you may have missed. Ethiopian Human Rights Chief Commissioner Daniel Bekele has called for the immediate release of all media professionals recently arrested in the country. Bekele says the number of detained journalists and media personnel has reached 16. In Mali, Muslim cleric Imam Hamoud Diko says the military regime's arrogance and the international community's pride are the causes of the continuing crisis in Mali. In Mozambique, the Central Committee of Frelimo, the party in power, is meeting to prepare the party's special Congress to renew the political commission and Central Committee. And in Nigeria, Ashetu Obinani, a woman in a predominantly northern Muslim state, has emerged as winner of the gubernatorial nominee of her party in the primary election in that country. Well, we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Heather Maxwell talks with a Ghanaian Afro-trap musician about his latest music video and his work with the underprivileged youth.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology.
City, rural, educated or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Well, now turning to Basketball Africa League taking place in Rwanda. The third place game is on in Kigali. For highlights and more, VOA's Eddie Rema joins me live from Kigali. Good evening, Eddie, and please give us the highlights, especially what's going on at the moment as we speak.
Good evening, Vincent. Right now, here at Kigali Arena is halftime between Zamalek of Egypt and FAP of Cameroon. So far, after halftime, Zamalek is leading by 42 points to 29 of FAP of Cameroon. So they're basically playing for the third place after both teams were eliminated in the semi-finals. We remind our viewers that the main game is tomorrow between Petro de Luanda of Angola and US Monastir of Tunisia.
So some may wonder, how important is the game today when actually the big game is tomorrow?
Well, this is a third place game. The winner will be crowned the third team. So it's important for the teams, but for a team like Zamalek, which has been the defending champions, it's more of a consolation game for them to win this. You remember that they had been unbeaten since the beginning of the BAL edition last year, and that unbeaten run was cleared by US Monastir during the semi-finals. So it's more of a good feeling, a consolation game for the teams that will be winning this third place. And so far, Zamalek of Egypt is leading by 42 points.
Well, thank you very much, Eddie. That's VOA's Eddie Rema reporting live from the City of Action, Kigali, Rwanda. And now it's time for our entertainment report, and Heather Maxwell, host of Music Time in Africa, joins us now to share the latest news. Hello, Heather, and what do you have for us this week?
Hi, Vincent. So I have got a talented artist for you to meet. He's from Ghana. He's a rapper, producer, a civic leader. And if you're a sports fan, a traditional Hausa boxing fan to be precise, you're going to love his latest work, Sarki.
Please clap.
Hi, Kirani. How are you?
Hello, Heather. I'm doing great.
So what is the story behind your name?
My birth name is Ayat, and then Kirani in Hausa literally means call me. So call me Ayat. That's Kirani Ayat. Kirani Ayat.
You have a new song and video release called Sarki, which I know in Hausa means king. The opening lyric says this is a true story. What is the story?
The story is actually about Dambe, which is a fighting style that originated from the 10th century in the Hausa community. And it's a form of combat sports that's really very extreme. Right? And then usually the king is known as the Sarki in that sport. So what I am saying is I am the king, but this time in the music, and I'm laying my claim. But we use the Dambe sport as the concept to carry the music and the video.
Also, the style is Hausa drill or Ghana drill or Afro-trap. Tell me what makes it any of those three things.
I really love traditional Hausa music and instruments and percussions. It's a very rich culture. It has a rich musical culture. And I'm also heavily influenced by hip-hop. So what I do with my music is to blend it with what my interests and influences are. So when you hear those gurmi, which is the two-string lute, it's very present in that song and most of my songs. You hear the kalangu, which is the ampere drums. All of those instruments and percussions are centered in my production. And then obviously I'm making music in Hausa, which is also my native tongue. And then all of that comes together with the 808s and the hip hop elements. And then I just want to coin that as Hausa drill because it has that influence in there.
I noticed in some Dambe clips, those instruments are actually played during the traditional fights.
Yes, it's very common. It's like it goes with the music. The sports goes with the music.
Back to Sarki, the song. It is part of an upcoming album. So tell me about your album coming up.
So my debut album, which is titled Aisha's Son. Anyway, Aisha is my mother and I am her son. So it's an album that chronicles my life pretty much from my decision to start making music because it came very late to me. I started making music super late in my life. My family had to adjust to this new idea of me making music and all of that. So all that chronicles from when I picked up the mic to where I am right now, the awards won, everything in this short period is what Aisha Sen is about.
Do you plan to finish it within this year?
I plan to actually release it in September, which is my mother's birthday, so definitely this year.
Make sure they pay up before you show up.
All right, Kirani, is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Oh, thank you so much, Heather, for the continuous support to VOA, to Music Time in Africa. You guys have been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirani. All right, so Kirani Ayat also runs a skates crew for underprivileged youth. Here's what he has to say about that.
Yeah, I do have a skates crew called Kokrobite Skates Crew, and I founded it about 8 months ago. I used to frequent Kokrobite, which is on the outskirts of Accra. It's a fishing community and a tourist community, and there isn't much that happens aside that. So the youth often found themselves engaged in drugs, premarital sex. It's just not good. So I started going there and hanging out there, and I realized I could provide for them, you know. So a lot of the kids like to skate and do bike stunts. They're extreme. So I promised them I could give them skateboards if they promised to take it seriously, and I could support their educations and whatnot. As little as I can. And then they took it seriously. We started with 1 kid, it turned to 2 kids, 3 kids, and now we're at 5 kids. And the goal is to pretty much create an avenue and a safe space for kids who want to learn skateboarding and surfing, and also IT, and push their education higher. So that's what Kokrobite Skate Crew is about.
And that's our entertainment report for this week. For more music and interviews like this one with Kirani Ayat, go to Music Time in Africa on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and listen to the radio show every Saturday and Sunday on voanews.com. Vincent, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Heather, and be sure to join Heather Maxwell again next Friday for our Africa 54 Entertainment Report. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, have a great weekend.